Your microphone on. Good evening, everybody, to the new year and a new committee with looks like familiar faces. So it's good. Got one or two not here, but they'll be coming at a later time. So 2 apologies received from Councillor Taylor. Substitute will be Councillor Melly. And you think you had apologies from Councillor Pearson, but no, you're not sure.
Yes,
we can note it down. Or it could have been Councillor Corwick. Cool. Any declarations of interest? Good. Minutes of the last meeting. Are we all content and happy? Proposed second. There you go. With no public participation tonight, we're all watching Holland play Romania. One assumes. Right, so we're straight on to first report from Sam and Claire. Fantastic. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. So we've brought to you tonight a proposed pipeline of projects. We're bringing the proposed pipeline to you today to give you the opportunity to review it and provide comment, subject to us then presenting it to the leader for a leaders' decision session on the 17th of July and then presenting it to the Mayor to consider for future funding opportunities. We've been through all of the relevant scrutiny committees, so each one in turn invited them to review the proposals as you see before you. There's different colour coding within the Annex A, which shows the different comments from the different scrutiny committees. And looking around the table, some of members here tonight will have had that opportunity to speak in different scrutiny committees already. The pipeline has been mapped to council plan actions, which are numbered for you on the 3rd column along, and they've also been matched to York ambition set out in our 10-year strategies. They've also been mapped to the mayoral combined authority, or the joint committee, I should say, the combined authority regional economic framework, which is approved by the combined authority in March. It's worth noting, of course, since March, the new mayor has been elected. The mayor has revised the economic framework, and you'll see that revision, I think it's on paragraph 15. When we present the final pipeline to the leader for approval in a couple of weeks, we will have mapped, we hope, the projects that you agree to remain in the pipeline to the new mayoral priorities, so that there's a clear line of sight, I should say, between our proposals, council plan, our 10-year strategies, and the mayoral regional ambition for the sub-region. Can I just introduce you to and invite you to Sam to speak about what the other scrutiny committees have said, so you can get a broad understanding of the different comments we've heard from other members. Sam, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Sam.
Hi, Sam Blythe, Strategy Manager, Corporate Policy and City Partnerships. So as Claire mentioned, we've been taking a rolling stock take of recommendations and thoughts about the pipeline from the different committees, starting back in mid-June with corporate services. Just to note, we'll also be taking this back to corporate services next week on the 8th of July. A nice round circle for this particular issue. Just to note, you will see on the Annex A that contains feedback from the first 2 committees, so that's corporate services and then health, housing and adult social care. We took the pipeline to the economy and place committee on the 25th of June. That isn't reflected in this pipeline because of the timeline in terms of getting publication. So just to reference what was mentioned in that meeting, as you probably would expect, the main focus of activity was on the well-connected economy section. So there's quite a lot of interest around shovel-ready projects, what could be included in this, in addition to business case development, which you'll see throughout this document. There was talk around active travel and access to public transport routes, park and ride, late night provision, access to disabled parking at the art gallery and Castle Museum, and also it touched on equality and accessibility training for staff across the region as well. So it adds to what was already built on from the other committees as well. So you can see kind of a continuation of the theme across the different scrutiny committees. Obviously, we'll take that back to corporate services next week, and then, as Claire mentioned, on to leaders' decision session in the middle of this month. Yeah, happy to take any questions on the pipeline.
Thank you.
Questions? First up. We can't all be happy, surely. Councillor Cuthbertson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Early years, which is on, let me put that up, the last page of the pipeline items project descriptions. I think this is a very necessary area to train young people of York in, and in particular, given changes elsewhere in the education economy, the possible increase in numbers of nurseries, and the possibility of nurseries attached to schools or playgroups attached to schools. I think the more we can do to train young people, the better. And that should, how can I put it, have a particular focus on what you might call York's early years economy, which might be rather different from one or two other big cities. So I'm putting that forward with a thought that other members might want to contribute to that, and some may have a ready prepared answer.
Thank you, Councillor Cuthbertson. That's been raised before as well about the importance of the early years economy. So thank you. We'll take that away and we'll make sure it's strengthened in the report itself. Thank you.
Councillor Nelson, Councillor Cuthbertson, Crenshaw, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I was within the same section, actually, where it talks about the green construction skills sort of initiative. I was, and this may not be something for this plan, so but I was wondering whether there's scope to kind of push that a little bit wider in terms of could we be asking for through the Mayor and through the North Yorkshire Combined Authority, could we be pushing for those sorts of apprenticeships and other sorts of apprenticeships to be kind of supported and run throughout all of the councils in a kind of targeted way? So I was thinking, you know, I know that we try and aim our or try and recruit care leavers into our apprenticeships. I have, this is not my idea, but I think a wonderful idea that someone mentioned to me recently about actually targeting perhaps some of our apprenticeships at tenants within council properties, and kind of encouraging people who are already on our radar in other ways to access opportunities for education and training. And it just seems like this might be a really good opportunity to work across the region to not just, you know, having a green skills initiative and the skills village and things like that is great, but actually there's something about embedding that through the culture of all of our councils that seems like a real opportunity for this, if we could kind of push for that.
Councillor Croshaw and Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, thanks, Chair, and apologies for being a couple of minutes late. I think I probably got the gist of most of what you're saying from CSMC the other week. But just specific to this committee, there was just a couple of observations I had, and they're all, I think, on page 28. Apologies, I have difficulty between my PDF and my online. It doesn't seem to populate the words. So I've got my notes in one, and then I'm trying to transcribe them onto another. But if I just kind of go through and just tell you the thoughts I'd had. So one was just around digital connectivity. There's a couple of strands to it. One is we've discussed in this committee, and I think at CSMC a couple of times previously, around the fibre rollout that's missed quite a lot of areas of the city centre. I appreciate it isn't necessarily something that comes under the combined authority directly, but I think anything that we can do to be pushing for those infilling of those gaps, it would be really, really helpful. But one where I thought it possibly could work, and certainly in the wording that you've got here, which talks about connecting business and communities to digital opportunity. And one of the things that I know is a significant issue for a number of households on low income is data and running out of data. And we have currently hotspots in commercial areas of the city. So, for example, on Bishy Road, there's a hotspot. A number of areas of the city centre, there are hotspots. If we could put hotspots into areas of high density of social housing, I'm thinking particularly some of the council estates that there are in the city, whereby we could give people access to a hotspot that would alleviate the pressure on their data. That has all kinds of benefits for their accessibility, both to opportunities for employment, but also in terms of benefits, in terms of the offer that we increasingly are making from the council, which is primarily online. And I don't think it would need to cost very much in terms of rollout. And it's the sort of thing where a little bit of seed funding, perhaps from the Mayor's office, could go a really very long way. Are you happy, Chair, for me to go on to a couple of other points that I wanted to raise? Further down that page on inward investment, and I don't know whether this ties into cultural funding and cultural heritage, sorry, not cultural heritage, but the cultural sections. I don't know whether you're aware of the Music Venues Trust, which has raised a significant amount of capital over the last couple of years and is looking for partner organisations to match fund to try to bring in community interest groups to run music venues not for profit. We've been crying out for years and years and years for a 500 capacity venue in the city. We've got spaces that have got protected their principle of being a 500 capacity music venue, but we're lacking the investment in those. And again, I think that there's a real opportunity to partner with an organisation like Music Venues Trust to see some investment from that point of view. And then following on from that, the cultural funding and the sort of cultural offer, the emphasis for me reads very much towards sort of museums and, you know, that side, the heritage side of the cultural offer. We've got a fantastic music scene in the city. We've got some great artists in the city. It doesn't need to have much in there in terms of wording, but I would really appreciate something in there just to reflect that culture is broader than museums, old stuff. You know, so we've got to be really forward facing as well. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. I just had a small point connected to Councillor Nelson's point about the green skills, is that at York Environment Forum, they were talking about the construction training that there is at York College and various other providers, and the lack of green skills that are in those courses already. And it seems that if we could do some joined up thinking with the providers who are training up youngsters in the city to have those skills that we know is a gap in the city, that seems like it would be a really sensible joined up thing. And certainly when York Environment Forum have engaged with them, that seems to be a bit of a gap currently. Thanks.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Sorry, I'm very.
Is it my turn?
Yes, it's your turn,
Are
Councillor.
you a bit tired,
I am
Councillor?
very tired.
Good. I thought I'd jump in on that particular point about green skills. So I was up at York College, I don't know, relatively recently. And you know that they're in the process of they've got this whole room full of different kinds of heat pumps, for example, that it's looking at training people up in how they install heat pumps and how they sort of modernize things. I think they're very keen to move with the times as well. So I think it's really a good point to make. Councillor Cuthbertson, yeah, early years skills agenda I think is really important, and I think I'm glad you've raised that as well, because you know we were talking just before the meeting, weren't we, that it's certainly not the be all and end all, and it won't, decent pay and recognition in terms and conditions would go a long way, but this is something that we can do. One thing that I wanted to raise was just if we've got any opportunity to have guaranteed interviews for our care leavers in York and North Yorkshire, I think that's something that we should think about. I was talking the other day, apparently that is something that is going to happen for ex-soldiers and ex-military folk. So surely a similar thing could be extended to our care leavers. I think that would be a big step in the right direction. Could I just ask one question though about youth zones, and just a little bit of the detail around what we think that means.
Yeah, so Councillor Callum, sorry, Councillor Taylor actually sent me the link after the last meeting we had that he was in. It's a national programme that has set up youth zones across the north. I'm going to say Barnsley have got one. I think Bradford or Bolton might have one. And essentially it's a facility for young people to experience all sorts of different things, from I don't know, boxing and graffiti to maths by stealth, you know, doing computer gaming and all that sort of thing. So it gives young people a place to go that is something for them, developed with them, that provides them with opportunities for activities that will support their future worlds and lives, if you like, but in a way that isn't, you know, doesn't make them all turn off the minute they get there. So it's not the old traditional youth club
Yeah,
approach. It's much more kind of interactive and engaging than that.
yeah, and I think it'd be worth linking that in with sort of the city's youth strategy and youth partnership work that's ongoing. I'm sure in North Yorkshire they have something vaguely similar. Because I think it's just working with what we've already got and supporting each other.
Councillor Clark, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Cuthbertson.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for the information about youth zones. That was kind of one of my questions as well. Mine was really to come back to Councillor Crawshaw's point, really, and because we mentioned the UNESCO Heritage City, but we don't mention UNESCO Creative City of Media Arts. So I'm just wondering what role that might play. And I think, you know, in terms of international relations, it has a role. There's quite a lot of activity going on there. And I guess this also kind of links into digital art skills as well. So we mentioned cultural heritage skills, but we don't mention digital art skills, you know, which, you know, I think York is considered to be, you know, out there in that respect. And I'm just wondering whether we think we've got it covered by the universities, for example, or whether there is, you know, a place for those in this kind of pipeline as well. I had another one as well, but it looks like you're good.
Well, just to say, I think anything we can put in the pipeline for additional funding, I don't think university is going to turn it away. So let's just get it all down there and then have that conversation. Thank you.
Thanks. I did have a second one. I'm not sure it pertains to this committee though. I just wanted to go back. It's the first page, and it's about and it's really just one of personal interest, really. And this is about let me just find this. And it is about secondary centres and smaller centre plans. And it mentions community neighbourhood plans. I'm just wondering, it does reference Town Hall Fishergate, whether we've got those already. But I also wanted to sort of bring up, and I am a Groves resident, it does fall within my ward too. But you know, there was a Groves community plan some years ago, part of a regeneration of that particular area. And I'm just wondering whether we've got these things existing or whether there are things to add in there, and whether, you know, something like the Groves community plan would be added in or could be added in.
We can definitely add the Groves community plan in. That's not a problem at all. My understanding is there's community neighbourhood plans being produced for all of the wards, and that's underway at the moment. And some of those neighbourhood plans will require some sense of capital investment, and that smaller centre plans gives us that option to bid for capital funding if we need to support the development or to support the initiation of the neighbourhood plan once the neighbourhood plan has identified the community asset that's needed in that particular area. So it's the Town Hall, Fishergate, etc. essentially means anyone that's got a neighbourhood plan that needs capital investment then gives us an opportunity to bid for additional funding.
Can I just come back to that? Yes. Are these linked to what the community involvement officers are doing, the neighbourhood action? Right, okay, that's fine. Thanks for
that. You are next.
Yes. I have a supplementary and then I have my question. Just when you're saying neighbourhood plans, are you meaning like local plan neighbourhood, you know, like planning neighbourhood plans? Okay, I was going to say, because obviously in our area there's the Greater Acomb Neighbourhood Forum, but they've decided that they don't want at the moment to work on a plan, like a local planning plan, but they are still obviously doing that work separately. So it would be including all of those forums. Great. So one of the other kind of questions that I had, which I also thought maybe didn't sit in this committee, but actually I think maybe it does. When, right at the beginning, when you're talking about a pipeline of capital projects for the city centre, I was wondering whether, because it doesn't reference anything about the waterfront, I know there's kind of been the big kind of plan around the city centre waterfront, opening up that area down the riverside. I'm aware that the council doesn't own all those buildings, but is that why that's not referenced, or is that something that we could be referencing within the wider city centre plans, or yes, where does that sit?
So anyone that knows more than this is very welcome to chip in. My understanding is the city centre waterfront plan is being driven by the Helmsley Group, who are have already got capital they need in place. They're already looking at community consultation, and I believe it's either gone through planning or it's in pre-app stage. So the city centre plan we're talking about is how we support and wrap around that. So it's not kind of like a little island on its own. It's got a kind of routeway and corridor through all of the bits of the city, from Davygate, Piccadilly, wherever.
So it's still very much like part of what
part
we
of the
will
big
be
plan, but
looking at more widely.
yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Cuscus.
Thank you, Chair. On the last but one page of the pipeline items, I'm referring to building international relationships, which is about just over halfway down the first of those two pages, and then cultural passports for young people. And I'm sure this has already crossed people's minds, but we already have a York Munster Twinning Association. This is the kind of thing that we should build on. I know many of my friends, both kind of in their 30s and 40s, so much younger than me, look back fondly with their relationships that have been built up through schools associations with Munster children, and I think possibly from elsewhere. But it seems to me as if those arrangements could do with some support, not just moral support, but perhaps some kind of facilitation in there. And I'm sure that as far as Munster is concerned, there would probably be a lot of enthusiasm in bringing that similar support back in the other direction. I wouldn't want to go so far as to suggest that it will be good for us to get back into Europe by this route, but it will be a start.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. It's quite a small point, but related to the cultural passports, I was just thinking about how you get that to slightly harder to reach groups like refugees and the Gypsy Roma traveller community, as well as home educating families. So they often are not quite as easy to reach as those other groups that are in secondary school. And I thought it was just worth mentioning that building ties with those communities would be really positive in terms of bringing it to all youth in the city. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Melly.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a question about the early years training line that we already talked about. You know, there is a big shortage of early years place and childcare places and staff. And that's a problem for the things identified in here, you know, having a thriving workforce and productive and innovative economy. And it's also really important for affordability, which is one of our EACH principles. And I can see why this line about providing, supporting early years training is in there, because adult education is devolved to the Mayor and Combined Authority. I was just wondering if there are any other possible solutions to that problem that might also fit into the devolved powers, and if there's any other things, that could be in the pipeline. Because more training alone isn't going to solve that problem. Are there any other ways of solving that problem that might fit in here as well?
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll take that back, Councillor Melly. The Combined Authority the Mayor has a commitment to tackle the cost of living crisis. So that's one of his new priorities. That's separate from the regional framework that we based this originally on. And they're in the process of appointing a policy officer to support that. So we'll take that to the new policy officer and speak about how and what they might do to increase places across the city and the region, of course. Yeah.
Councillor Cuthbertson.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question but a comment. The problem with early years is that it's a mixed economy in which, if you like, statutory support's quite missing. And although the government's extended the range of free, effectively childcare, to go back to the age of 2, I think it is now. The problem is that nurseries are struggling in general, and there's no structure in terms of their staffing and post holding and that kind of stuff. So there's a range of qualifications available, but what we could be doing usefully as a city is to standardise on that range and try to promote its delivery in the various establishments that offer it. I think the other thing that also reflects on this not so well is that the existing scheme is geared at people who already have paid employment. So the people who are really feeling the pinch with the cost of living crisis and might be able to use 15 hours a week or even 30, depending, they're left out of it because they're not in a job. So I suspect that, you know, maybe some pressure to change that situation might be helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Any more? Oh, it's quite a bit to take back now, isn't it? So this is all going to go back, as you say. Then do you come back again, or is this?
So this is it for you all. We'll take your comments, put them into the revised version for the corporate scrutiny meeting next Monday, I want to say, and then take your recommendations, all of your recommendations to all of the different scrutiny committees to the leader for her to reflect on and make a decision about the final pipeline that we put to the mayor mid-July. We are working through a process by when we next come back to you, which we wouldn't expect to come back to you before a year. So you've got 12 months without us. But it depends if things move very quickly. So of course, there's a general election on Thursday. Is there? We know that there are different commitments from the different parties around devolution that might increase funding and increase expectation. So that might change our approach from coming back with giving you a 12 months off. We might have to come back earlier for a different discussion. But we're alive to the fact that things are changing fast in the world of devolution, and we'll be back if we think we need to. And you're very welcome to invite us back if you don't think you've heard from us quick enough, then do say, come back and talk to us about it.
I think you're right. We just need to see what comes, don't we?
Yeah, we do. See what happens, yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Cheers. A little bit of paper. What's that? Oh, it slid across. Welcome. We are on to 5, aren't we? Family hubs.
Do an introduction. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're back again with family hubs.
Just been a year.
Been a year. And actually a huge amount of work has been done in that year. We've really started to see the fruits of the work. Had some fantastic sessions with partners who are now very comfortable with each other. What this report does gives you a bit of historical context about where and why family hubs have developed. But importantly, it also talks about the impact and feedback on the work and the next steps and some of the work that we're taking forward that you'll see in the latter part of the report. So I don't know if you've got anything to add, Neil?
Yeah, no, just to mention as by way of context, as Pauline says, really, so we were one of 12 local authorities that bid for and successfully secured one-off funding back in 2022. That funding comes to an end at the end of September 2024. So the report really is covering the pilot activity and the lessons learned from that has taken place. Annex A gives a bit more of a detailed picture about some of the activity that's taken place. It also sets out where we are in terms of developing the ongoing evaluation framework and the partnership that we had with York St John University and University of York that have been very supportive in facilitating that. And then, as Pauline says, look into the future. What does this look like beyond the actual funded period and sustaining it within existing arrangements? So rather than me talk at great detail through the report, it might be easier to move into sort of questions that you have from the paper.
Very good report. Questions then? It's too good. Councillor.
Thank you so much for the report, and I would just like to kind of commend the work that's gone on as well, because you can see how much has happened and the movement from last year, and obviously we receive the timetables every month of what's going on. I don't know whether I should have declared an interest in that. I may indeed be using some of these services.
Pending interest.
Yeah. One of the things that I was wondering reading this is in terms of those next steps. Obviously there's kind of an acknowledgement that it hasn't worked as well out of the community, the children's centre buildings, compared to kind of places like Explore, where they've got that neutral footfall, which I can completely understand, although I've been to some lovely events at our children's centre. But so my question is kind of what are the next steps in terms of expanding that community reach? Obviously, it says in the report there is a plan to do it, but it would be lovely to know whether that's, you know, in our ward, there's loads of community cafes, for example, and, you know, things that are going on already. Are they looking at kind of going out and representing themselves in some of those spaces, or, you know, what is the plan in terms of expanding into other community locations?
So I'm going to answer this in general community terms around the whole lifespan, really, around community interactions. So we are talking now in a joined up way to health about all our community resources and their plan to move, health's plan to move resources within communities, and how we can work alongside each other given our financial challenges, our reduced resources, but also to absolutely recognise the needs of localities. So not necessarily working at the ward level working that goes on now will continue, but we're talking about working at locality level. And actually those localities reflect the localities that we've been working to with family hubs, and each are distinct. They've got their own characteristics, but it's broadly the three areas that you know in York. North, east and west, and around those Explore library buildings. And again, this is not about buildings, it's about networks, and how we can work more effectively across all our teams, whether it's housing management, whether it's community involvement officers, whether it's local area coordinators, so that we can wrap around the resident or a family when they're in a time of need for support, as part of an early intervention and prevention strategy. And this is what this has absolutely been about. It's getting early to help people, to prevent then people accessing the deeper statutory services and reducing costs. And that goes for health as well. They absolutely recognise this as a future model. So you'll start to see the lessons learned from family hubs deeping through into a locality model this autumn. So we're aiming to bring through to executive the first ideas around that, to then start forming our staffing structures going forward. And we'll absolutely use the learning from the family navigators, what's worked, the locations that's worked in, how we can start to pull budgets around some of this, pull the assets, and then start to take forward permanent staffing structures into future years and drive through sort of efficient ways of working, but absolutely putting the resident at the heart of everything that we're doing in a recognisable area. And the GPs are starting to talk in that same way as well, and they're sort of in their own networks that spread beyond the boundaries of York. But they're absolutely key to recognise that actually this way of working will have a positive impact on their workloads, because what they tend to find is that they're dealing with everything, and if they've got a network around them, they can absolutely start to see how their resources can be used in a better way by being able to connect into local networks. And it's all about local networks. So you'll see more coming over the next couple of months, hopefully, building on this.
That's great. And it's not as much about kind of expanding the number of places where this stuff is happening, but it's about really nailing those networks that already exist and the people who are already in all those other places, so that everybody knows where you are,
Who to go to.
who to
where
go to where.
Yeah,
Um,
in a locality.
Yeah, rather than kind of having an extra day of the week where we're at Explore this day, but we're at other community location on a different day.
And we absolutely recognise there's going to be people we can't reach. So we're thinking about the solutions around that. So we're looking at the pilots that were through ward funding that have been undertaken with the benefits bus, for example, around using that kind of idea to reach those people that can't even within their localities access services or support, to understand that kind of, and using data to target that support as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Crawshaw, Councillor Ward, and Councillor Knight.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair, and thanks. It's again really interesting and really good to see all this sort of work going ahead. And I'm, definitely a big advocate of that kind of whole child, whole family approach. I just wanted to ask you some questions in particular around the projected Send Family Hub, and I will just I perhaps would have declared this at the start of the meeting, but just for transparency, I've got 2 children who have additional needs, and so some of this is partly from personal experience and some of it's from experience of supporting families. I think the observation, first of all, the digital offer and pulling all the services into one place, I think is really helpful if you know what you need to look for. I think the website is still quite difficult to navigate, and I don't know whether there's opportunity to perhaps have somebody look at it from the point of view of somebody almost coming cold and going, how would I get to the relevant bit of information if I didn't know what I was trying to find? Because I think if you know what you need, it's great. There's a load of stuff there, but it becomes more difficult. Although I think most Send families do end up as experts in pretty much everything. I'm just going to, annoyingly, my laptop's just locked, so I'm just going to unlock it while I get to my second thing. Oh yeah, so this is paragraph 33C, and there's this aspiration to have things in a single physical environment, which I think is really great from a couple of levels. One, I think it's always good when you've got multidisciplinary teams. It's that water cooler moment that you create by having people co-located. And from the point of view of Send families, getting out the house is often a challenge. So if you only have to go to one place, that's brilliant. But actually, even going to that one place, I think, can be really, really difficult. And I can't overemphasize how difficult it can be to get out the house or even just reply to a single email. It literally can take a week sometimes. So I'm just wondering whether there's the opportunity there, or whether the intention is, as well as actually sort of physically co-locating people, will there be like a central virtual Send hub, a way of being able to call in and actually potentially speak to the first person, but then be passed on to relevant colleagues rather than having to sort of do the calling around yourself? I do have another question, but if I can let you answer that one.
Yes, so just to sort of take each point in turn, really, around sort of the and I think when you're talking about the updated website, are you referring more to the refreshed local offer website that launched alongside the Raise York Family Hub's website, or all combined?
I think so, but I think it would be a general point around this. There's a large volume of information, but it's not always easy to get to what you don't know.
Yes, and I think so in terms of certainly both of the Raise York website and the local offer website, co-production was used in terms of bringing that information together. And I think we'd recognise that it's a step forward from where we were. Certainly on the Raise York website, there are 2 phases to it, one of which was information content, and the second phase is around the service directory. So there is some further technical changes that are happening to the Raise York website that will make the service directory easier to navigate. So hopefully that will not just connect people to information, but local services in a bit more of a smarter way. In terms of the local offer, it is a very complex system, and I recognise the story that you're saying around how, as families, often you feel like you're the one that are having to hold all the pieces of the information. It makes sense of something that is incredibly complicated. So we will continue to commit to making sure that virtual offer and the local offer continues to be as best as it possibly can. But part of the aspiration around the Send offer is trying to make that human and make that real as well, because the website has to try and cover all possible eventualities. But actually what the Send Hub does is it allows it to be much more then personalised and human and relational, which is what the learning from the family hubs tell us works really well. We had a really good conversation with colleagues in Cheshire East, who were also one of the 12 funded areas at the same funding as us. They went earlier on a piece of work to develop a Send Hub, and actually that's given us some really interesting insights into how, by bringing those professionals together and driving those relationships with families, it has made that easier for families, but also not just within that building, how by driving that integrated working through that building, it's then had the knock-on effect throughout the rest of the system. So actually it isn't the be all and end all about getting to that physical building. Actually, we would expect to see benefits for families through improved integrated working across the piece. So I hope that sort of addresses the points that you were looking to.
Yeah, I think so. And then if I may, the other bit that I just wanted to sort of check on really was, so again, that same paragraph at point E, which is talking about the early stages of developing the hub and working closely with partner organisations, parents and carers. And in particular, it was around the working with parents, carers and their families, because one of the things that concerns me is that the families who will have time to be able to give feedback to this sort of a thing are not going to be typical of families who are facing additional challenges with their children and families. And so how do we ensure that the voice of those families who are perhaps absolutely in the thick of it, or are you know, single family, or you know, all the various complications, how do we get their voice into this? Because actually it's great that people are able to contribute time, but my slight worry is that it becomes a slightly skewed version of what would be most helpful, because there's a really big range of experience if you're a you know, family that's having to navigate any of this sort of stuff.
It's a challenge that I recognise, and part of what gives me confidence is looking back to when the Send local area revisit happened, and they identified that co-production with families in York had really developed and should now be considered a strength. So whilst we are in the early stages, and I know that a paper will be coming forward to executive in relation to the overall development of the Send Hub, that really grounds exactly what you're saying, that the development of this has to be done through co-production. This is not something that is done to families, it's done with families. And it recognises completely the challenge that you're saying, that actually there is such a range of different needs, and actually many of those that are in greatest need are most challenged to be engaged through co-production. So all I'm really saying in response to that is I really recognise the challenge, and I think in the conversations I'm having with colleagues that commitment is really there, that co-production is at the heart of how this hub is developed. I hope so. I hope that gives some level of reassurance, but I'm sure you'll probably want to test that at a later stage as well.
It'll definitely be a theme I'll keep coming back to every time it comes to us. I suppose what I would just urge is, if there's opportunities to proactively go out, and even if it's just a, you know, follow-up phone call to somebody to say, by the way, would you be interested in 5 minutes just talking about this, rather than waiting for somebody who's got the time to be able to come and offer. Again, from my own personal experience, I don't think I would be in a position to be able to go and spend an hour or two, you know, doing a sort of activity. But if somebody rang me up and said, what do you think about this, and can you give us 10 minutes of your time, I'd be much more in a position to be able to respond to it. So if we're doing things that are proactively seeking out those families where it may be more difficult for them to engage, I think you'll get really valuable feedback. And I would urge you to take steps. I appreciate it's really difficult, I really do, but if there's opportunity, you should take it.
In the report that's coming through, it will reference an inclusion officer whose job will be exactly that, to reach out to people from the hub itself. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Waller.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank officers for this report. It's been an ongoing process because the government weren't exactly coming forward in detailing what they wanted out of this. It's very much been developed by the team, and with engagement with partners and with families. I think the key thing is detailing that the people who are benefiting from the service don't need to understand the wiring. That's your job, is to sort that out with CYC and with partners, so that what people need, they are readily able to understand where they can get that from and not worry about exactly which location it's coming from. And it's you know, I'm grateful for you maintaining it's not about buildings, it's about the service, because I think there is a tendency to require everyone to go to the other side of the city to a particular building, and actually it's about utilising the networks that exist in the local area to make sure that however they let someone who can help them to understand what they're looking for, so that they can be signposted to the right place, whether that's through the school's pastoral team, that's being done. I just had a question in terms of, I understand there's the report coming on the savings to the early help budget, because you did reference that this was about reshaping provision, looking long term and looking at budgets, because this is a one-off figure from government in terms of that rewiring, but long term there does need to be an insurance that the early help is there wherever it's accessed. It's just you've referenced some future reports that are on their way to the executive. Is that report coming at the same time, so that you can see what the landscape is in terms of available resources?
It will talk about the principles of a locality model. I guess this is a policy direction that will need adoption from a political perspective. In terms of the early intervention savings that you're referring to, where those savings came from and the review that was taking place was outlined in the most recent finance and performance report in detail. So where we managed to find those savings, which secured the local area coordination team in particular going forward, who are recognised as being absolutely integral to this future working model. So yes, we were successful. What that piece of work did was allow us to work across the council at very senior management level, and working with the health service at very senior level, at place board level, to look at how we conducted early intervention and prevention activity across the city. It's looked at staffing, it's looked at budgets, and it's looked at assets, and that's where phase 2 has come from. It identified some, if you like, early quick wins around spends that we could save to achieve the target. So that was phase 1. Phase 2 is very much now in train around how seriously we're going to work together within localities, and that's what's going to come through in the next report.
Councillor Knight, Councillor Cuthbertson, and then Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. There's certainly a lot to think about in the report, and there's lots of positives and things that we can do that are quite encouraging. I think my observation really is a general question, is for very obvious reasons. I think generally when we think about the family in this context, we're thinking about parents and younger children. Certainly, I'd say under pre-teen, and I'm just wondering what has been looked at in terms of older teens and young adults around mental health, special educational needs, all those areas, because my experience from talking to people and my family experiences, that there's a tendency for those tweens and teens to sort of fall out of it a little bit. They don't want to go with mum to a centre to do X, Y, Z. And anyone who's dealt with a teenage boy, you can't force a 15-year-old to go with you to a family hub. So I'm just wondering what work's been done to reach out to those older teens and young adults, and what services are being considered that would be slightly different for them, and whether that's going to be included in the report. And I'd also be interested to know what the age groups are of the families through the pilot that have been engaging with the service. Thank you.
So just picking up on that point in terms of the age range, the lessons learned and the data that we have at the moment suggests that the predominant users of the actual buildings and coming through the doors are parents with younger children. It's not terribly surprising given sort of historical sort of building blocks of the policy, but also the buildings that we're actually using in York. National policy and what expectations have been set are quite focused around those early years. Whilst the age range talks about including teenagers, there's a little definition about what that means and what that could look like, which is where the development of a youth strategy is coming in and part of our vehicle for how we can look to address that. And again, that's looking not just exclusively at the buildings, but looking at the city, what is the actual offer to young people. So a report came to Scrutiny late last year and will be returning, I believe, in September about the development of the youth strategy. It's referenced lightly within this report. We're doing work currently with our partners. The local regional youth work unit is facilitating conversations about how we can come together collectively and work to the shared priorities with young people. One model we're exploring is a local youth partnership, which I've mentioned at a previous scrutiny committee. Exactly what that will look like will be shaped by York. There are different models that are out there, but essentially the bottom line of that is that we would hope that would be a way by which we could work together to grow the capacity and resilience of all of the youth sector that are working locally so they can meet the needs of young people. Anecdotally, there's a limited sort of a bit of additional engagement that we have seen in terms of feedback from colleagues within the Explore service around young people's engagement, and certainly at Burnholme there is a specific youth session which has started as well. But that is a developing picture, and I think we'll pick up the detail of that when we come back with the youth strategy later in the year.
Gutherson next, sorry, Councillor Gutherson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. The detail in this is quite, it makes a very interesting reading and it feels very, very positive to me. I just want to ask two questions at this point. I've got two for later, another half hour's discussion, I'm sure. There was a comment a minute ago, Neil, from you about the operation of the website and a user's finding that they couldn't necessarily find what they wanted. It's a problem that I've been experienced in creating new websites and other facilities before. What I wondered was, is there any information or feedback got from users which might lead you to the source of their difficulties?
So yeah, there's probably three strands I'd point to at the moment. So we are still in the privileged place of having a co-production coordinator specifically aligned to family hubs. So they do ongoing work with families. They were integral in the designing of the initial website, but also in helping us to evaluate that. Colleagues working within Family Information Service are also going to shortly be going out post-election with a survey with users of the website. So if any of you wish to take part in that, help promote that, please do. So that's part of us gathering some of the feedback about what the usage actually is. And then the third element is, and we could lose ourselves down a rabbit warren, but something that's of great interest is then all of the analytics that sit behind this in terms of how people are actually arriving on the website and navigating through it. There's a huge amount of data there which can give us insight into where people are arriving at the website, where they're leaving the website, and is that a dead end or did they get to where they wanted to and then left? So a combination of those three things would be used to sort of continually review and develop the structure of the website and how it can meet needs.
Okay, thank you. My second question for the moment is on covering, I think it's the right paragraph 10 on page 32 with the 5 possible outcomes that are helpful by families. And on the top of page 37, I've written the note, one objectives 1, 4 and 5, or A, D and E to be more accurate, are covered. So what about 2 and 3 or B and C? Are those yet to emerge or have we got some indications?
I think with the evaluation, as you see in the report, there's sort of the 2 phases to it, and we've deliberately praised the first one around lessons learned and actually what's working and what's not. I think in terms of really being able to see that there are we're working with the DfE appointed evaluation partner called eChorus. They've paused their evaluation work currently as a result of the sort of the pre-election period, but they will be starting again. And that will include a limited, so I'd have to say that with a bit of a health warning, a limited number of interviews with families, with professionals, with managers in the area, which will be used to measure the progress against the outcomes that we're looking at. Realistically, this is a very long-term piece of work, and that's where the partnership with University of York and York St John and the development of the ongoing research framework, that will give us the real long-term confidence in that. But you're right, we would be wanting to look for where are those emerging signals that are telling us these are expected outputs that we would see on the journey towards those long-term outcomes.
That's very helpful, thank you. I'll come back with the others later if I may, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Webb and Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I just wanted to sort of remind everyone that Neil, quite frankly, has put in a hell of a lot of work in all of this, and I just wanted to, you know, thank you on the record, really, because I think that it's been a huge, I'm not going to say labour of love, but you know, you certainly put the time in, and that's fantastic to see. And you've made a real difference to families' lives. I went down to the Tangall Children's Centre a little while back, which was absolutely covered in children. They were plastered everywhere. It was fantastic. And the family navigators who were working there, again, do an absolutely brilliant job of building up that network of young people and their parents and everybody in the same space. And one example of that was a parent champion who was there talking to other parents. And so that network was not just about services looking down, it was about communities coming together. And I think that's really important. And I think that then leads on to what we found around building networks. And I'm really glad that health are getting on board and they're seeing the benefits of this. And this is a real positive. And I think that then distills into the Send Hub, which Councillor Crawshaw, I think you're spot on with how do we engage with people who've got incredibly busy lives. But what I'm really heartened by is the fact that the Parent Carer Forum, who nominally represents this group of people, are really keen, and really engaged, and are engaged at all the different stages and implementation, which I think is a really good sign. And really speaks to that model of trying to bring everyone together. So you only have to sort of tell your story once, or actually you're in that building and people can work together. And I think finally, I think this just speaks to what we're trying to do as an administration. I mean, we've got the EACH principles, and I think particularly around the first one, equalities, and the last one, health, this speaks to that so clearly. So I'm excited by what's coming down the pipeline. And it wouldn't have happened without this initial pilot phase and all of the hard work that you and other officers have put in. So thank you very much for your work. I'm really hopeful for the next steps. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of have a chance to say that what I've seen has been really good so far. So thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Clark, Councillor Wilson.
Excuse me. Thanks, Chair. And just thank you for the report. Just to echo my colleagues around the table, great report. I'm particularly pleased to see mention of gypsies and travellers in there. I think everyone knows that this is just for the sake of transparency that I do work for the Travellers Trust, and then my colleagues and some of our clients have been involved in this process. I'm sort of digging into the detail here just about the advanced clinical practitioner, and it's great, to see gypsy travellers in the NRC and the migrant community. But I was just sort of interested about that role because obviously the gypsy travel community in York in particular are quite a settled community. So they've been, well, some families have been here for generations, where migrant communities have either been here for a few years or longer. And just wondering, you know, what that role is and whether we'll see those differences, whether it's a number of roles or it's one particular practitioner, and just what that looks like basically, and how it will be. How it would be taken forward. I appreciate it's probably early days and we're still looking at piloting it and all that sort of stuff. Thanks.
So yes, the piloting of an advanced clinical practitioner, obviously, as I've already mentioned, we've looked to family hub models that have been developing elsewhere. Hull had a very interesting similar model, which was around improving access, particularly for communities where there was poorer health inequalities. So we reviewed that and looked at, okay, how could that actually work in York? It would be a single additional role that we would be testing for a 2-year period with funding coming from the Family Hubs Transformation Grant, but also coming from the ICB and also from Health Education England. And it would be both within the actual hubs themselves, so engaging existing groups, putting on new groups in response to local needs, seeking engagement from the community into the support and wider offer that comes from the Family Hub. But it would also be about reaching out into those communities. Whilst we're looking at it through the lens of the gypsy traveller and migrant community, I think picking up on Pauline's point about there is huge scope of potential work with health and how health can work within a locality. I'm quite excited about what that role could actually do and how that could then influence some of the relationship with health and how that health provision is delivered in localities. So we will be building on the learning that's come from the Hull model. They've shared with us their evaluation report and we're not saying what translates there is exactly here. So we are adapting it to what we think and see as being right in York. So we're expecting that will be beginning later this year once recruitment has been completed to that post. I'm sure they will want to reach out into the communities and reach out to colleagues around the room as well to understand those communities and how best to engage them.
Councillor Wilson again. Oh no, sorry, no. What's Councillor Wilson? Yeah, sorry. Councillor Wilson and Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair, and that's a really positive response. I'm really pleased to hear that's the plan, I think, for some of the young people I work with at the Travellers Trust. And that would be brilliant. So good to hear. I'm also on the stage of looking forwards because it's really good to hear what's in the report so far. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the plan for the interventions around the family foundations and the resilience PPP work. That sounds really positive, and I noticed that both of them say they're going to be a targeted intervention, and I wondered if you could just speak a little bit about how you're going to target those interventions. That'd be really interesting. Thank you.
So those interventions are coming to York on a slightly different but connected piece of work. So we bid off the back of the work that we've done around family hubs into foundations. For those that don't know, that is what was the Early Intervention Foundation and what Work Centre. They merged. They had to come up with a shorter name. The name is Foundations. So we've secured just over £300,000. We're one of only 4 areas in the country that have been able to do that. The foundations themselves chose the evidence-based interventions. There were a selection of 3 that we could express an interest in. We thought that all 3, to be honest, would be a helpful fit in York. The other one, for completeness, was a parenting programme called EPEC, which is where parents are delivering the parenting programme. But foundations themselves, based off the bid, said actually we think these are the interventions they would like us to develop in York. In terms of how we're then going to actually target those, that is yet to be decided. That programme only began in April of this year. So we've been working with foundations on the development of a delivery plan. We've met with the providers of the actual interventions themselves to understand more about exactly what they are, how they've worked in other areas, identifying who would be the best people to be training them in. So that there is a separate delivery plan which sets out exactly how this will work. Realistically, I think it will be in the early part of next year, spring of next year, when we will start to be moving towards the rollout of these. The time between now and then is all of the detailed work that you're describing about the who, the how, the what and the where. and obviously tying that together with our local needs assessment data from JSNA, that kind of thing. So I'm sure in a future update, we can let you know as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My final two for me. On page 39, paragraph 32, you say that the role of the family navigator, which has provided valuable insight into the importance of giving families a warm welcome, that's likely to change. I don't think I've detected you saying what it's likely to change to. Is that something that's yet to be discovered?
Yeah, it's going to build into our design of the locality model and the people that we want in there.
Oh, right, okay.
You know, to be perfectly honest, there aren't going to be any extra new resources, so we'll be learning from what's worked from the family navigators in terms of best practice. And I suspect we have a range of best practice across existing models anyway, but it's coming into a consistent approach to supporting people in networks that works.
Yeah.
It just gives us another example role that we can
Fair
follow.
enough. Thank you for that answer. And the last one is page 41, paragraph J, scaling the team around a school model, in which about 2/3 of the way down the paragraph, we are now taking forward plans to scale this approach to a further 7 schools. I'm assuming those are all primary schools.
Not necessarily. There was a discussion at the Raise York Partnership Board in relation to this, where they received a paper detailing the proposals. I think we will be looking at sort of where we think that will have the most reach. The idea with the scaling it in that way is to try and take the learning from the initial pilot, but then develop it to a scale where it can become sustainable within the overall school environment themselves.
The other part of that question, which I didn't ask, is that restricted to York maintained schools, or does it include MHEs?
I think it would be open to all York schools, to be honest.
I mean, I favour that, but I wondered if there was.
Yes, no, I think the piece of work that will happen next, now we've had agreement on some of the proposals, will be about identifying which of those 7 schools are, but we haven't begun those conversations with colleagues in schools yet.
Thank you for that, Neil, very helpful.
Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. Just super quick, just nothing to do with the content of the report, but the structure of the annex. Can I just say it's really, really helpful to have a sort of this is the things that have changed, here's the bullet points, here's what went well, here's what wasn't expected, here's what's going to happen next. It's really clear to read. And I think if we had more reports that kind of came to us in that sort of format, it's just really helpful in terms of understanding what's been going on and where your thinking's at, and questions that get raised in the first bit are answered already within the report, so you don't need to kind of come and ask lots of questions. So I don't know if we've got a way of being able to feed that back more broadly across the piece, but I personally found that really helpful.
Ask everybody else to bring the report to the same way. Any more questions?
To be a full recommendation.
Can we make a recommendation? You want to propose as a recommendation, Councillor Crawshaw? See if Reece can wield a bit of magic on that.
I'm happy to, if that's helpful in this type of a report. It's not going to be appropriate for everything, but I think for this type of report,
It
it's
is
really
right.
helpful structure.
It did make it a lot easier to read. Any more questions? I've just got a couple, which, to be fair, I think you almost answered, Polly. The money at the beginning was a one-off. So did you assume that it was always going to be a one-off? Therefore, it was about working together and not reliant on future funding? And have you got anything left that, if only the Euro millions came our way this week, you could do more? Or is the plan work as in we never expected any more money, so therefore everything is where we want it to be?
From the outset, we worked on the basis that this was one-off money and that we wouldn't be getting further money, and that we would need to be not setting things up only to then shut them, because actually we want to sustain this as best as we can within existing resources. In terms of the scope of the work, I think it's one of those that, as we've gone through the project, we've learned as we've gone. It has been over a number of years. All of the integrated leadership team, to be honest, will have a list of actually these are further opportunities, these are other things that we could have gone on and done. But actually, I think what we've focused on is maximising the impact that we can get from that as a one-off resource, and then take the learning from that and the legacy from that into how we work and continue to develop.
Makes the report even better then.
No, good.
And just one on smaller question on number 27. You said something there is really, really good, and you're encouraging people. Is there anything that anyone can do to, because it just seems you've done something really good, and it's like, is everyone going therefore going to pick it up when actually they should pick it up rather than it'd be nice if they did?
So
where would that pressure come from?
On the children's workforce induction tool that we've developed around this, of the core services, so we've sort of segregated the overall children's workforce into two bits. One being a core workforce that are in regularly within the family hubs and are sort of key interconnected players within this. The expectation that we have agreed with the leaders of those teams and services is that they will use this as a common induction tool, and we'll be tracking and measuring that. It is a tool that is of great use to anyone that is working with children, young people, or just has an interest in. So I would encourage all of you to look at it. What I'd also say is that there is a survey on there which is helping us to understand what in the pack is particularly helpful and what has that changed in people's knowledge and practice. So we would really welcome any feedback that can come back so we can continue to develop the resource.
Thank you. Yep.
Absolutely, and we would entirely take that into working in a locality way across any hub, any community setting, because all of it makes sense, including how to work in partnership and have those, integrated conversations about achieving joint objectives. All of that sort of thing is covered in there, and cultural challenges in particular, because a lot of this is about culture and working together.
So maybe we should make a recommendation that we all do number 28. All those in favour? Agreed. Minute back.
I do wonder whether it would be worth taking forward as a recommendation to executive that all councillors
Do 28.
do the induction toolkit as part of
you go.
induction, or yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
I think
All those in favour? Agreed. There you go. All councillors to do number 28. Or what it's called that. Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for a great report. A lot of pressure on these two, don't there? Yours is a great report too. Angela and Paul. Cool. Where are we up to? Item 6. Which is what's the appendix? What's in there? Item 6, the appendix. Where you go? Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for reviewing our strategic plan. This is based on the performance that we've had this year. This is Paul Cliff, he's our shared head with York and North Yorkshire Adult Learning Service. So as he hasn't got a name tag, I just thought I should introduce you properly. As part of our governance arrangements, we come to Scrutiny to have this reviewed. Our exec member looks at how we start the year and thinks about what are our targets for the year, and that's what the strategic plan is made out of. We have to now produce an accountability agreement, which is also signed up, and our strategic plan now links closely to that, whereas in the past it would link to specific recruited numbers and things like that. So we've sort of changed that focus. So this is the first year we've brought this sort of report to you in this format. I hope the report tells you all what we've been doing. We've been very busy and we've done a lot of things, new courses this year. I particularly would like to focus on the development of the bite-sized learning provision that we were doing. So it's very knowledge. If you know adult learners, they struggle with time, struggle with fitting things in and everything like that. So the bite-sized learning provision was all to give access to very short bite-sized courses. Didn't necessarily give people a qualification, but it did give them that step into those skills that they needed to build. And we've been trialing quite a bit of this at Hazel Court with a lot of people there to develop their digital skills, their English and maths, and it's working really well. So we've also been able to translate those online, and people have been able to access them for free online as those bite-sized steps. So that's where the bite-sized provision has sort of gone with. And the evolving developments and partnership working that we've really done a lot of work this year, not only within the health and well-being sort of area, but also within the skills area. So we've worked closely with York College, and we've borrowed some of their tutors to do some introduction courses to courses that they have at a higher level. So like cybersecurity, which when the LSIP was doing a lot of research, it was very clear that cybersecurity was an area of skill that they needed, that there was a weakness for. And then we've also done data analysis and CAD design, and they've all gone really well. And the applicants have all been interested in progressing with that tutor back to the college to do a level 3 or level 4. So that has worked really well as a way forward, and we're continuing to develop that and see where else we can progress it. I don't feel I need to read through everything because I've given it to you, and thought maybe you'd just like to ask us questions.
We're very good at reading on this committee, be pleased to know. Hence all the questions. Who's going first? Just said everybody reads it now. Councillor Crawshay, you've always got a question.
I've always got a question.
I'm disappointed if you
back.
No, we don't tell.
Thank you for the report. I actually just had a question around your funding model. Paragraph 5 says services almost exclusively funded from external contract funding and fee income. And I wasn't sure, first of all, whether that's individuals paying fees or whether that's like a sort of going to a business or some other organization. But whichever way round it is, I suppose, I just wanted to kind of check that you feel that it's a resilient model, given that we're in an economic, difficult times, and particularly if it's individuals who are paying any sort of a fee. Have you noticed any change in the uptake or their ability to actually engage with the course? Because it's great if you're seeking to make yourself more employable, but if you can't afford to make yourself more employable, how does the service account for that?
So we have multi-layers of way of getting funding, to be honest with you. So we have our adult skills budget, which is funded for community learning and for skills. So if anybody's earning under a specific amount, they get a course for free, specifically for English, maths, digital, ESOL, anything skills related. There are also then a range of courses that are also available for free if they come under the hardship fund or anything like that, which could be within the health and leisure and wellbeing area, to help improve someone's confidence or well-being, or just to get them back into that social mix. We also have a social prescription model where people can apply. Well, quite a lot of GPs will send people to us and they get a course for free for a term, maybe 2 terms, to try and get them into that sort of resilient mindset. And then they either take it forward themselves, or we talk about what is free across the city, what else could they do? Because obviously we can't maintain a long time social prescription model. We have reduced prices for people so that they can still access the course on a reduced fee as well. We have a full cost offer where people pay, those who can afford to pay do pay. I was told by learners recently, they felt that was very affordable and that they felt that that was a very good price for what they get. We have to use a range of venues to make that work. And we also have some funding from West Yorkshire Combined Authority for learners who maybe live in that area, but they work in York and they want to learn in York before they go back home. What else have we got?
That's largely that pot, but in relation to that question about the resilience of that funding, we know what funding we'll get next year, because we've had an indicative arrangement from the Skills Funding Agency. A year from that, it then goes to the Combined Authority. We're working very hard with the Combined Authority and have done significant work with the Combined Authority in shaping what their skills strategy will look like, and therefore their Adult Skills Fund Commission strategy. And we we have done that significant work to make sure that that community base and the importance of community and the importance of access are absolutely vital to that. So we feel that we're in a good position. We can't guarantee it because until they issue us with our first amount of funding, we can't guarantee it. But we think that our model and our delivery approaches tie very much with the aspirations of the Combined Authority, and therefore the opportunities for us to deliver what we need to do in York and for the residents in York, but in line with those wider aspirations as well.
And then just on resilience, so post-COVID, our fee collection had gone down quite a bit, and that just seems to be recovering, to be honest. If we're just getting back to that sort of price, we have had to put prices up for next September, but so far we've not had any impact from that. It looks recruitment is already going well, re-enrollments are already happening, so fingers crossed that hasn't impacted us too badly. Cost of living will affect us. It affects us in venues costing more money, people having to pay more to get to you. There's always a knock-on effect, but I think we've been very sensitive to that, and we've not increased our prices for a couple of years because of that, but we've just got to that point where we've got to. So hopefully we've done that, and then we've also applied for projects like UK SPF and so on. So we have that, which part funds our IAG offer to enable that, because IAG isn't funded by the skills funding, even though it's a core part of it. So we've applied for other funding and projects to help us fund those sort of things. Does that help?
Before I come to you, can I just give me some idea when you say what is the price? Because I mean, obviously I have no idea, I'm afraid. Just to give
I've worked out a per head price per an hour is about £8.
It's a bargain.
I think it is, but in other authorities it would be less, but then they receive more funding than we do. We receive probably quite a small proportion of community learning funding compared to quite a lot of other areas because of the way they calculate it.
And you say it's bite-sized, so just the way that people are then. So would they say, I'm definitely going to be able to come for the next 4 weeks and buy that, or would they just be it sort of week by week, or is it?
They pay it in blocks, basically, right, because we have to pay the venue every week. If some people didn't arrive for 2 weeks and they didn't pay, that would affect our financial model. So we have to sell 10 weeks as a block, or 6 weeks, or a workshop, and that's what they pay. And then we have refund policies that are in place and everything else to have a fair look at whether we can pay someone back if they've, maybe something medically has happened to stop them coming and so on. So as much as we can, we do try to refund, but sometimes we can't because we've already outlaid the money for the tutor to be there and for the room to be available.
Councillor Nelson, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Waller.
Thank you. My question's more about kind of where you see the gaps being, I guess. It's really nice to see in here, the missions around working to support progression for all learners into all sorts of things, and stuff about kind of engaging with wider demographics and things like that. I think perhaps this is partly me. I feel like I've never quite understood exactly what sits within York Learning and what sits within kind of, say, York College and Ask and Brian and those kind of FE providers. But I'm particularly interested in, we've got more and more home educating families and families with children, teenagers who've kind of fallen out of the formal education system and aren't necessarily being picked up by the colleges. Do they kind of fall within your remit, or what role do you play as York Learning within that kind of situation?
Probably got a dual answer here, but I will start with to say that we actually cover a lot more learning than people realise. So we have a 16 to 18 study programme for those who haven't had good experiences at school, which helps those pre-NEET maybe that help put them on the right feet so that they are ready to apply for college or ready to do an apprenticeship and so on. So that's a really successful programme that we have running. It's up to capacity, it's got a waiting list and everything like that, but we can only fit so many in the venue, and that's what we can do. We also have the 16 to 24 SEND program. So we facilitate a lot of learners via subcontractors to do learning that they need to do to support what they want to do across the city. And we work with different subcontractors to deliver that for us, and we make sure the quality and all the Ofsted processes are in place and the funding is there for them and the routes to fund that are in place. We then have apprenticeship programs, 16 upwards. That's probably a challenge. Adult care, for example, you get a lot of people leave adult care, so that's really hard to get them to achieve. So we don't do apprenticeships in that anymore, but we do level 2s, level 3s, which are free if you're under a certain salary, and that enables the employers to still get those skills for them. Because they're funded in a different way, attendance, and it's quicker to get them through the courses, it tends to get to achievement a lot better as well. It's just slower. Their timeliness is really poor because of it, all the shifts that they have and so on. Childcare is a real challenge. It has pushed apprenticeships into minimum standards this year. We're only 0.4% into minimum standards, but it's still 0.4%. And it's only related to 8 learners. 4 of them have left the vocation, and 4 of them, well, they were told that they no longer needed to do maths for the qualification. So therefore they refused to do it. Unfortunately, our funding and our achievement is set on the fact that they do achieve the maths or the English. And so therefore they count as fails for us, even though they did achieve their certificate. So those are some challenges that we have. Target groups, the most disadvantaged groups are hard to reach without proper outreach. And we struggle with that because our funding's quite small. It's hard to find that pot to increase the outreach. And that's probably one of our challenges. But we work with lots of partners across the city, like Kira, CVS, lots of different groups to work with the clients that they have, create courses around that, and that tends to enable us to engage with them in that way. Do you want to add to any of that?
Yeah, on top of that importance of outreach and that work that Pauline was identifying around localities, there's work that we can do in terms of that whole preventative agenda within adult learning. And we're only really scratching the surface of that at the moment in terms of how we can stretch and manipulate our offering related to that. I think we do have challenges, as Andrew pointed out, in relation to how we are currently funded and the odd views of education funding that come from York as a city with 75% of people at level 4. Therefore, we don't need to provide that much money. However, there is that work with the combined authority to try and address that issue of, well, actually, it's not those people who need it really need it, and therefore they will be much more expensive to support than somebody who's maybe doing a level. So we have those issues to try and address. But equally, we also know that a major target market for us are those people who just don't know what they don't know. They've left school, they've got a job, they've stayed in a job, they're probably miserable, they're probably not earning as much as they could potentially earn. And by opening their eyes into learning, their lives can be very, very different. And it's those types of groups that we're also starting to target. So we're placing a greater emphasis on data, a greater emphasis on what we can do to allow people to step through a door into learning, get them into learning, and then we can do wonderful things with them. So it's about how we can shape our offer to enable that to happen.
Thank you.
We sort of fit into the engagement end before they hit York College. So we tend to engage with the communities and with those with lower skills more, which we build them up and then they progress to the college so that they can then enter the courses that are available there. Because quite often the adults we work with do not have the confidence to go straight to the college.
And it sounds though within that then that one of the kind of big areas of need is that area that you have a waiting list for within that case, which doesn't surprise me actually, in terms of that kind of pre-NEET is an awful term, but those kind of young people who are still kind of a school age, but they're not within the system, and they're also not kind of being picked up or not able to go to those formal learning settings. And do you have ideas, thoughts, plans of how? I mean, I'm sure that you're racking your brains for how to come up with a second course or do something for those young people on that waiting list.
Well, with a study program, they have to be in learning for about 3 to 4 days a week. It's quite a few hours that you have to have them in. So we spread it out over 4 days, which is why it doesn't enable you to put another group in around the same venue and so on. But we're going back to look at another premises tomorrow to see if any of that will be suitable. We'd have to work out the finances and everything, but we are going back to have a look at another premises. We've got some plans drawn out of what the rooms would look like in there, and then it's just how viable it is and everything else, and whether the existing tenants that are already there, how they will cope with our roots programme going into their premises, because it doesn't always mix well with other people on other floors.
But we are trying to also work with other partners in that field. So we do know there's specific UKSPF money targeted at the college and Askham Bryan, and learning from that model as well about what worked there, what didn't, because realistically that model, the 16 to 18s, but the younger age group, we aren't funded for. However, we are funded to work with parents, and we are funded to utilise some of that family learning model in order to be able to do that. But also we know the skills and expertise we could bring to a partnership arrangement like that. So we are getting much more involved in that sort of collaborative learning partnership network within the city to try and make as much impact as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowles.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask about, I'm really impressed with the bite-sized learning, because I know that's really responsive to what people need. And I just wondered whether that I know it's relatively new, I just wondered if you're seeing yet that those people are then progressing into other courses with you, whether it's working as a kind of opening the door.
I've been told it's been very positively received, and that they are progressing into a proper English course, proper maths course, or IT course. So some of it has just been, this is how you use your mobile phone to access your email for work, and this is how you do this, and this is how you're going to log this on this spreadsheet, for example. Some of it's been as small as that, but it's been very personal to the teams that work at Hazel Court to make it very relative to them, and it's worked really well. So we're very positive that it's moving in the right direction, but it's still early days.
And can I just ask a quick follow-up, which isn't really to do with your report, but I just wondered whether you've had input into the pipeline stuff on all the early years educators, because I know that this is an area of great knowledge.
So I haven't had input into the early years end, but we have had input in that there is a business skills centre suggestion on the pipeline, because one of our biggest challenges is that we haven't got venues of our own. The only venue we have is for the the Roots programme, 16 to 18 study programme. The rest of it, we use multi-centres right across the city. We use secondary schools, which can be a barrier. We use libraries, which can be a barrier with some groups. We have to use community centres and so on, but we can't leave equipment there. We can't set them up to be up-to-date adult learning centres. We are using children's places, young people's places, which can be barriers in themselves, with adults you're trying to encourage back into learning. And for me, it's crucial that we do have our own base that is centrally based, because we are a centric city, and most of the learners are willing to do one bus journey to us. They're not willing to do two. So if it's out at Huntington, for some, that's 2 bus journeys, and then I'll get a complaint about not being able to get out there. And the same for if it's at York High. So there's offer that we still do local, and definitely family learning stays out in the areas and that, but some of it should be central. It would also then make it much more accessible for the combined authorities work right across North Yorkshire, because they could come into York, do some training with us in whatever. We could add construction, we can add green skills, because we'd have the sites and the venues to put that infrastructure in place. I don't have that at the moment, therefore I can't participate in it as fully as I would like, or do that partnership work with York College and Askham Bryan and the universities that I would really like to do, because I can't resource a building or even just 1 yard to do it. That's all we need.
Councillor Waller and Councillor Cuthbertson.
Thank you, Chair. Just starting off with the local skills improvement plan, when that was first required by government, there had been some concern that, well, we've developed our skills plan and now we've got to do another one. And whilst it was helpful that many of the same people were developing that, there was the worry that that might drift off on a tangent. So it's really understanding, has it been able to work closely with existing plans that you had, and more importantly, that it's ensured that you've been still able to deliver the training that people want and need.
I think the work that went into, I think you're absolutely right. One of the key bits was lots of the same people were around the same table. So we already had the city skills plan. Then there's the requirement for the LSIP to come on board. Very much the way that the LSIP was written was a collaborative piece of work that didn't start from ground zero. It started from, these are the plans that have already been in place. It then did the bit that it needed to do by the design of an LSIP, which was go out to employers and say, what skills are you looking for? Usefully, what came back was actually the skills that we'd already decided that they were looking for. And then moving forward 2 steps on that, we know that the Combined Authorities new skills plan is written on the back of the LSIP and the 10-year skills plan. So everything is remaining joined up. And it's been a useful, if I've achieved anything in the time I've been here, I've been able to glue a lot of things together between York and North Yorkshire to prevent things going off at a random tangent. So I think what we've got is a series of plans that do pay very close reference to each other, do clearly now align with something that is very, almost still reasonably unique in York and North Yorkshire, in that these plans have people at the centre of them, whereas a lot of other areas have gone with, these are the needs of business and we will just build some courses and hope people turn up. Whereas actually the way that the plans have been articulated locally, there's a real identification of, yes, but how do we get people to want to engage? How do we free up employers to be confident enough to allow people to engage? And I think what we've then been able to do is articulate that on a local level through Angie's team to say, and what do we do as a result of that? And I think some of that movement of this year's strategic plan reflecting the accountability statement that we had to write to respond to the LSIP then flows through into here, so that you can see that we are still starting to do that. And the new accountability statement makes even greater reference to not just the LSIP, but also the council plan, the wider council plan, and the needs of the combined authority as well, so that we can make sure we're holding on to enough strings to keep the money flowing, but it flows to the people, which is the most important bit.
Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. This looks very interesting, and thank you for the report. I'm looking at page 63, I think. No, I can read it. It is 63, but it's the continuation from page 62 that I'm slightly unsure about. The bit that I'm interested in is the business of identifying pathways, and you've obviously got a model, at least the first draft of the bit of software that you're going to use to do this. It strikes me as being a very interesting thing because it depersonalises the step forward that many young people have to make. And I say depersonalises, normally that would be a bad thing, but we all know about where a good role model comes from, and sometimes a good role model is a machine, which is fine. So I suppose my question is, you've got this initial product produced as a test piece, and the IAG leaders requested significant changes. Are you going to try this on real people before you put it up? Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to explain a bit more about
it? Where we were with the model was, it's very clear that careers guidance in all its forms for many years has been, to use a technical term, bobbins. It's not been particularly good unless you are in a very small targeted group of people who are able to access that. But for the wider population, people are using role models who don't know any different, so You know, a large number of people know how to get to university, and you get to university and that's what you do, and then you worry about your career afterwards. Or you've got those people that I talked about earlier that get a job, and I've got a job, I'll stay in the job, I'll keep a job, not recognising that the importance of transferable skills, not recognising the importance of, I'm going to spend a load of time here. What does it mean to me to be satisfied in that time? So the initial idea was to take that, these are the transferable skills and these are the potential career pathways where those transferable skills and those qualities and those attributes will allow you to progress. And that was where we went to from a model. Because everybody is massively busy, but we do have the opportunity to work across 2 authorities. The North Yorkshire team were targeted, we'd make a start on it. The North Yorkshire team has a range of experiences in there, but the real quality IAG experience is here in York. So North Yorkshire started the model and they've basically overlaid course pathways in reality. It's more like a glorified course directory. So it hasn't got the front end or the back end that we're looking for it to use. So now what we're doing is we've got that input now from the York Careers Specialist. We're now going to be able to utilise some additional funding through UKSPF that we're getting in North Yorkshire to start to shape what this might look like as a tool and how it might start to work. So it's going to be refined. It's going to be refined quickly. It's going to be refined probably more quickly, starting with those areas that were funded through the Local Skills Improvement Fund 4. So health and social care and digital, because those are the LSIF priorities on the back of the LSIP. So we're targeting those because there's some funding available to do that. But then we will utilise that with client groups across York and North York to say, does it work for you? Has it helped you to make your decisions? Has it helped you to identify you've come in for this course, but by experiencing that bit of learning, you've now discovered that you're actually really good and really enjoying this. How can that help you make that next step into a better job or a more sustained job or a job you just enjoy rather than one you just turn up to? So that's the sort of where we are with the model at the moment.
And I think as part of the combined authorities plan, isn't there, that there will be a bigger tool that will actually do this in a much bigger scale, because actually it's a huge piece of work to think about all these different pathways and fit it on a piece of paper is actually really challenging. So we've had to take quite a high up sort of view on it and try to hone in on what do people come and ask us about. I want to be in work in an office, what sort of qualifications and skills enable that to happen, and so we've tried to look at it that way instead.
It sounds potentially incredibly useful, and I think in particular for those young people who don't know what question they want to ask, and equally importantly, who they want to ask it of, then it may fill a very big gap, or what I suspect is a very big gap.
And it's a major aspiration of the combined authority to address all age careers guidance.
Yeah.
The vital bit for us and the bit we've started it from is we know there are large numbers of adults who will really benefit from this. However, the tool, when it's developed, will be as transferable to young people as it will be to older individuals as well.
That sounds very encouraging. Thank you. I wish you every success with that.
More questions? I'm just going to couple. Oh, sorry.
Well,
No, go on. No.
That wasn't really much of a question. It was really a comment, just following on, because I didn't know you were going to say something. I think when I was reading the report, one of my questions were, how does this work with the combined authority? And I think it's really encouraging to see, that sort of relationship developing. And I was, so thank you for bringing that to us, because it has really kind of, highlighted and kind of, yeah. Thank you.
That was my sort of question.
Oh, was it?
Yes. As in, because it is the combined authority's job, you're not going around bidding here, there and everywhere. Does that give you more confidence that you're only going to one person on the authority, that gives you more confidence that you can make a better forward plan than whatever the answer is? At least it's going to be an answer.
Yeah, it will be we will have clarity. I mean, the early discussions are talking about a 3-year funding settlement, which will be wonderful because at the moment we go year on year on year. So there is a real strong initial feedback that for grant receiving organisations, there will be 3-year funding arrangements. Equally, there is identification that there will be money available to bid for specific projects, which again will save a lot of trouble because it will be locally commissioned rather than bidding against national companies who don't necessarily know the footprint. So there are lots of opportunities in there, I think, for us to develop. And I'm feeling as confident as I potentially could be, but we will do all right out of this, and we will be that I don't feel that the combined authority will really be able to deliver what it wants to deliver without investment in us, because we are the best place to deliver that real vital engagement bit right up front.
And I think at first, there was a bit of a fear about the cultural offer and the wellbeing offer as to whether that would fit into that skills sort of arena that was coming forward. But actually the conversations have moved so much forward. There's definitely a clear wellbeing strand within the combined authorities strategy now. And we fit very well within that as well, because there's a lot of York residents who really enjoy the courses to support their well-being so that they can go to work every day and just get out of the house, and all sorts of reasons why they come to us. So it was really promising to see all that still in there as well. And that was partly from all our input, wasn't it?
And just one last one for me, page 65, where you've got the monthly learner story. Is that your sort of born in Blythe but made in Royal Navy, sort of like born in York and educated in York? Is that type approach? And is it possible to make that into a course that people make the story about the people and sort of?
We haven't done it like that.
Oh.
Not quite like that. It tends to be a learner saying why they came to us initially, and then what journey it's taken them on. So sometimes it can be within the art area, it can be within digital. So in our brochure this year, we've got 2 learner stories. One's about a young lad who came on a boot camp for digital, how he then progressed into provision elsewhere, where he got some set qualifications that are around networks, and then he's been doing some further work from that and related to what he's been doing around VR and so on. And then the other one, I'm trying to remember what the other one was. I think the other one was to do with English and how she'd progressed through that and how she'd got her GCSEs and how it helped her with the job. If it wasn't that story, then there is that story as well. But it tends to be it's to help people see how it can help them if they engage with us, where it might be able to take them and what opportunities are available if they just engage back with learning. It's more around that way.
Yeah. Anything else, nobody? All good? Lovely. Thank you very much. Good report. I like the presentation as well. We're a happy bunch. Where are we up to? Work plan. Being circulated. Any got any amendments? Any suggestions? Are we happy with where it's going? It's like we get another month off, doesn't it?
That's the performance. It's been moved.
Oh, hang on. Oh, it's in the next one. Yeah.
It's got this one, but it's got postponed.
There you go. So finance is in the next one. With send, school attendance and new strategy. That's in September. We'll be back from our tans with our tans, won't we? All right. Not always a woman thing. No urgent business. Apart from good luck, Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, makes me so good that I want anymore.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.